want you to think about the last person that did not work out inside of your organization. I'm not talking about the last person that quit, even though some of this could apply. I'm talking about the last person that you had to let go, or the last person that you worked way too far around because they weren't performing. And I want you to ask yourself, was that a people problem or is that a process problem? Now, most generally, people want to tell me that people are the hardest part about a business. And I get it. We're complex. I'm complex. You're complex. But most generally, when I dig in with a client, it is a process problem 9 times out of 10. We went with our gut. We winged it. And that is expensive. So let's get into it today. Welcome back to another episode of Don't Waste the Chaos. I'm your host, Kerri Roberts. I have been in HR for 20 years, and this episode today is the second part in my 13-part HR system series. I know, 13, bless, but you know what? That's HR for you. So often people are like, I don't even know what HR does. These 13 things, this is what they do. And episode 1, if you didn't listen to it, I recommend, you don't have to stop, but I recommend you go back and listen to it. It's the beginning. And it is the employer responsibility, kind of laying the groundwork. I've got this broken down into 3 overall systems. And the first is the employer responsibility aspect, the mindset of HR. It's hiring, onboarding, and compliance in HR law. So we're getting into hiring today. So this is the second part of this 13-part series over HR. And I'm so excited to do it. So a couple of things before I get started. One is the first 4 are in this book called the HR Easy Button, the first 4 systems inside of this 13 systems. I have written 3 books. One of them is published. This is it. I published it in June of 2025. This goes over that mindset. It goes over hiring, onboarding, HR law, compliance pieces. So if you want to read it instead of another avenue, this book is on Amazon, or you can go to saltnightadvisors.com/the HR Easy Button. You can check that out. I also have, if you would rather do listen and get some templates, I've got coursework out there, saltnightadvisors.com/HR foundations. And I've got those first 4 chunks of the system. So the mindset, which is the employer responsibility, essentially checklist, hiring, onboarding, and HR law and compliance. I've got those out there in one course. It's 4 modules. Each of the modules has 2 to 3 downloadable templates, tools, resources. So helpful. It's under $400. So if you listen to this today and you're like, I'm going to need some extra support, but I'm not ready to hire a consultant, which is what I do, I totally get that. Pick up the book or get the coursework. The book's around $20 or I think 16, something like that. The coursework's under $400. And if you're a small business owner, get in and do this, spend the time, block it out on your calendar. Or if you've got an office manager who owns HR for you, or you're a green HR person, this would be a great place for you to start. It's the whole reason why I started it. So we're diving into system 1 today. That's hiring. And this is where everything really starts, where the process kicks off. I want to be clear about why it's first. If we don't hire well, it's this trickle down effect. And just a couple of weeks ago, I was speaking to a group, an HR Empower conference in Southern Missouri. And we were talking about what I call the HR chaos cycle. And it goes like this. You hire, but haphazardly, right? You've got something that you need, you hire a person, and then you don't really have time to onboard them. And then before you know it, they're not hitting performance metrics and not hitting expectations. And then you've got a performance issue, and now HR is getting involved, and you're either coaching them up or coaching them out. Crazy cycle, chaos cycle continues. This is the beginning. Hiring is the beginning. The loop is exhausting. The loop is expensive. And a real hiring system breaks the loop, breaks the cycle. And so this is very important that we get into this today. I want to go deeper on all 13 areas. And so I'm going to in this podcast. So if you're catching it on episode 2 of the system, go back and watch 1. And then make sure that you catch these every week. I have episodes that go live every single Tuesday. If you have not subscribed or followed, come on now. I was looking at my data the other day. 91% of people who listen to one episode come back and listen to another. And for that, I am so grateful. And I would appreciate it if you would leave a review on Apple or Spotify or a comment on YouTube, but please make sure you're subscribing. I greatly appreciate it. This show's been going on. At the time I'm recording this is April and of 2026, and I launched in January of 2024. So I self-fund this. I don't have anybody paying for this with me. I do this because I know that when I'm talking to clients about the same ding dang things every single day, I just thought, you know what, I'm going to put a podcast together and address these things. And can we go as deep? Can I get into your industry, your niche, your specific issues? Like, no, but hopefully it's giving you some support. And if it opens a door and you recognize you would like some more, you can always reach out to me. saltlineadvisors.com/contact. So let's get into this hiring aspect today. I want to talk about why your current process is probably broken. And it's because most small businesses, the hiring process looks like this. Someone quits or you need help. That's the crux of it. And you post the job. Maybe it's on Indeed. Maybe it's on your Facebook group. You get some applications. You do a couple of interviews. You go with your gut. You make an offer. And sometimes it works out great. And I love that for you. Because honestly, this can be a huge pain in the butt and a huge area of contention in business. And most of the time when I'm talking to people, they're just making it work. They're making it work with people because it's so hard for them to hire. They just don't get it. Sometimes you're managing the person that you hired, and 6 months later, you're wondering what the heck happened. You thought they were going to be great. They're not. And here's what happened. You had a reaction. You had a need, but you didn't have a process. And that difference matters greatly. So here are some of the most common hiring mistakes that I personally see. The first is no written job description. So the candidate doesn't actually know what they're signing up for, and neither do you. And then performance issues start. Might be a great person, but are they a fit for the job? So often I hear this. I'll get into it more, but gosh dang. The second is different questions for every single candidate. When you're doing an interview, if you're doing an interview, you're comparing apples to oranges. The most charming person wins, maybe not the most capable person, but the best communicator wins. Another issue that I see is skipping the compliance aspect. No structured interview questions means you're more likely to wander into territory that could get you into some trouble without realizing it. That's a big one. And then probably the one that I see the most, though, is hiring because you like a person, not because they can do the job. We picture them in the company's swag way before we recognize if they can fulfill the technical skills. Personality is a bonus. It's not a baseline. Let me say that again. When you're hiring a person, their personality is a bonus. It is not the baseline in which we are making our hiring decisions on. Stop that. Gosh dang, stop that. So many of us are like, I'm just looking for a good person and I can teach them. Okay. Then is the job posting and job description clear? Do they understand what success looks like in the role? Have we onboarded them well? Have we ensured that they have appropriate training? Have we outlined what performance could and should look like? And have we let them know how we're going to measure them? If we haven't done those things, which most of us, small to mid-sized businesses especially, but oh gosh, I see this in large businesses too. If we haven't done those things, we cannot just hire a good person and then hope it works out because we don't have the systems in place. We just don't. And then also I see people not documenting the process. When things go wrong, you have nothing to point to. You're not exactly sure what's going wrong. Something went wrong. You know that, but you don't know exactly what it is because we're not documenting the process. So those are the main or the most common hiring mistakes I see. So what does a hiring system actually look like? I want to give you 5 components today that will help you understand exactly what a hiring system looks like. So hopefully you can see yourself in these and say like, okay, this we do have, this we don't, or this is a little light, or this one's consistent, or this manager consistently does this, but this manager doesn't consistently do this when they're hiring. So this is what we're going to get into today. There are 5 components that I build with every single one of my clients when I'm going through hiring. You don't need a software for this. You need a process. You need some intention. You need some consistency. So let's talk about what these 5 components of a solid hiring system looks like. Now, this isn't fancy. I'm not going to go into fancy today. We are going into the basics. And the reason why I'm starting with these foundational processes, which is the mindset around HR, hiring, onboarding, and then HR law and compliance, is because if you don't have these built, everything else suffers. But we end up in the operational side of HR, which is leave management, compensation. Like we end up in that area, performance, disciplinary actions, because that's the day to day. That's like managing performance, managing employees. And so many times, because we didn't build these foundational systems, is why we're living in the operational area, because we haven't outlined it all. So we start here. It's not the sexiest place. I get it. You're not like, this is so fun. This is the foundation, though. So let's talk about these 5 components. The first one is a job description that actually works. And I hear so many, especially small businesses, say, we don't have job descriptions because we're kind of, we're like a family. We're a team. We jump in. We're jacks of all trades. Everyone's just here to get it done. I'm not proud of you for that. That's when somebody says that to me, I know that they're meaning that like this team is rocking and rolling. We're here. We're all hands on deck. That is actually not something to be necessarily proud of. As an employer, as the employee, as the team, yes, row that boat. Everybody row that boat in the same direction, or you're on a 8-seater bike and everyone's pedaling in the same direction. No one's jamming on the brakes or trying to go backwards. Like, I love that for you as a team member, but as a business owner, that's not something to be proud of. We need a system for these people. We need clarity. We need consistency. And so when you say that as a business owner, what I hear is I haven't taken the time to build the foundation. And that's a bummer. So let's build it. So a job description that actually works. This is not a laundry list of duties. This is a clear picture of how this person succeeds in the role. A job description should outline what this person needs to accomplish in 30, 60, and 90 days. You should be able to use this. What skills are required? So what skills do you have to get hired into this position? And then what skills are preferred? They're going to bump you up in the list. And you know what? I see people sometimes draft these or pull them off AI or whatever, and then they don't even live by them in the interview process. Stop that. Come on. We took the time to write the job description. Let's live by it. Required skills. You have to have these. We're not budging. There's a lot of humans in this world. We're not going to budge on these skills. Preferred skills, though, they're going to bump you up in the process. This document becomes your interview rubric. They help you make decisions in the process. It becomes your onboarding guide. What should we be training them to? I literally tell people part of your training process is going over the job description line by line. Here's an expectation. Here's who you collaborate with. Here's how you're going to get trained on this. Here's when we expect you to be up and running on this. And you literally use that job description as your training guide, your onboarding guide. Like, use it. You already created it. And it's your performance baseline. So are you trained in all of these things and then you're doing them consistently? No. Performance issue. I mean, that makes it pretty clear, right? It's one document. It's triple duty. Interview rubric, onboarding guide, performance outline. Like, come on. That's exciting. Write you a job description. And you know what? If you're like, I don't even know what to do, go open up AI and say, just start rattling. Turn on the mic feature. And just start rattling. Hey, this person does this, and this. Oh yeah, and this. We usually have this education. You know what? They have to have that education. Or, it's a nice to have. We'd like it. And then people who have this level of education, I see them do even better. And then they have to have done this at another job, but we can train this aspect. And I operate in the state of Missouri, so please make sure that it's compliant for the state of Missouri. Blue, blah, blah, right? That's a good start. And then check it with your team and roll with it. And then you can change it over time. Okay, so component number 1, that job description. We're doing it this week. We're doing job descriptions for every single employee. And if you're like, I actually don't have time for that, go to all your employees and say, you know what, we're going to formalize some job descriptions. Can you start to document? Just give me a list of everything that you're responsible for per week and per month. And then if you have anything that's just per quarter. And we're going to start getting these documents together. And I want this done by the end of May or May 15th or whatever that looks like, and get rolling. Okay. Component 2 for your hiring system. This is a sourcing strategy, not a job post. We want a strategy. Where does your ideal candidate hang out? And you could hang out online. Are there trade magazines? Are there Facebook groups? Are there LinkedIn groups? What does it look like? Professional services firms, associations, what are they a part of? Don't just default to Indeed. I mean, okay, if you want to post it on Indeed, because then it'll give you a web scraper, like, okay, but don't just default to Indeed, okay? Think about LinkedIn. Think about I'm not promoted by any of these. Like, think about where they live. Your best hire may not be actively looking. Think about where they're showing up. This is a strategy. We're not just like post and hope. That's an HR term. Don't post and hope. Okay. The next component is a structured, consistent interview process. And so many times I have a small business owner or medium-sized business owner say to me, oh yeah, so-and-so, they're so good at interviews. They're really good at a vibe. They've got good gut instincts and they're really good at connecting with people. We do more of like a cultural interview than anything else. And they do a really good job. And when I hear that, what I hear is, we haven't taken the time to formalize this process and it's likely discriminatory on accident. That's what I hear in my little HR ears. It hurts my little HR ears. I love that you have that. Let it be a step in the process if you want it, but that is not what your standardized interview process needs to look like. Let me paint you a picture. You post a job and I show up as a candidate, and then a fresh college grad shows up as a candidate, and you've said bachelor's required, master's preferred. Okay, so I show up, and I have been around the block for over 20 years at this point. I'm well-spoken. I have a solid wardrobe. I always got the nails, the hair. My look is polished. I'm a good communicator. I speak in front of hundreds of people regularly as a keynote, and I'm charming because I'm a Virgo. Okay. So we're going to have the interview, and I have read the job description and I am pairing up exactly what I've done throughout the years to make sure that I'm saying all of the things that you want to hear. Okay. We're knocking it out. We're getting it done. I interview so well. And the younger candidate who's newly graduated actually has done this exact job, just more entry level at another organization, but they're not very well spoken and they are just not as confident and not as great of a communicator, but technically they have done this exact job before. And I haven't, but I just know how to speak to it. If we are going off of vibes, I am going to charm you and I am going to make you feel confident in my very successful hands, but I might not be the right person for the job. I'm just a better communicator. Or I get you completely off track and we connect on the fact that we both have sons that are in jiu-jitsu. We love BJJ, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, or you're a veteran or your dad was a veteran. Oh, my husband, I'm good at that. And we forget to talk about anything else. But what when you get done with that interview is we connected. We liked each other. We hit it off. And that is not an interview process. What you need are standardized questions for every single position. And let's say they're different roles. We want to have some standardized questions that go to every single role in the organization because it matters with our culture. And then we're going to have job specific questions for that role. I'm not talking about 1 million. 10 is a great start. 10 standardized interview questions. What's that going to get to? If you are sticking to the guide, and here's what I would say. When you sit down for the interview, you say, okay, thanks so much for coming in today. I will reserve some time at the end to address any questions that you have, but we do have our standard interview questions. And so we're going to start there. And then we might dig a little bit deeper in a few areas for follow-ups. And then we'll reserve some time at the end for you. Just set the expectation. I have so many people that are like, oh, this feels awkward, going through these or whatever. Like, why does it feel awkward? This is a business. You didn't say, hey, we're here to date. And even if I was dating right now, I would have my rubric because I'm going to make sure that those boxes are checked and that you're not just charming and then you're going to, I don't know, take all my money later or whatever. So there's nothing wrong with this. If you're like, hey, I'm going to read through these questions to make sure we get to all of them, no candidate's going to be like, that's weird. They're going to be like, okay, thorough. That's going to be totally fine. And so go through these standardized questions. We're going to make sure that we're not discriminatory and that the best candidate based on the technical knowledge wins. And here's what I would say. You need to have situational questions. Tell me about a time when. Tell me about a time when you couldn't get a contract across the finish line with a client. Tell me about that time and what you did to make it happen. Tell me about a time when a client said no to you. Tell me about a time when you went out to bid a project and it was very ambiguous and you couldn't get the homeowner to nail down their specifications. Tell me about a time when, whatever's appropriate for your industry, for your role, just nail those questions down, create your 10 question guide, and then be consistent. But those situational questions, we're not asking for yes, no, situational. And if they say, yeah, well, when faced with a situation like that, I usually do blah, blah, blah. And you're like, okay, great. Do you have a specific example that you could give me? Could you walk through a specific example? Because if they have actually done this in their role before, they're going to have a specific example. And if they don't have a specific example, they either have poor memory, they're a poor interviewer, or they haven't ever done this. And you need to make sure they've done it if you want them to have that level of experience. So if they're speaking in generalities, you can pretty much assume that they haven't done that exact same thing or they're blacking out. And you know what? Let's say that they're a poor interviewer and they're blacking out. Well, if they're faced with a stressful situation with a client, do you want them blacking out? I mean, again, like use the information provided to you through the process. So first component in the hiring process, a job description that actually works. Second component, the sourcing strategy, not just the job post. Third component, structured, standardized, consistent interview process. Fourth component, the legal piece. It's built in from the start. The compliance is built in from the start. Know what you can't ask. Let me just run through a quick list. Nothing about age, nothing about family status, national origin, religion, and we know disability, right? Ever. Not in small talk, not in an icebreaker. That's not what we're talking about. And if you're doing background checks, make sure they're relevant to the role and that they're consistently applied to all candidates for the same position. Those are some compliance basics, right? Be consistent who you run them on. And when you make an offer, put that offer in writing because we want to make sure that we're making an offer, not a contract. And so what's the difference? If we put a job offer, how do we make sure it's not a contract? We say it's not a contract. It's contingent on background screen or drug screen and successful completion of an I-9 verification. We just put those in there. That way we can tell it's not a contract. And if you're operating in an at-will state, we're going to throw that statement on there as well. This is an offer. Verbal offers, I wouldn't do it. We want to give them an offer. We want this person to feel like we're professional, right? Because we want them to be professional when they show up to work with us. Give them a written job offer. Make sure it's not a contract. Okay. So that legal compliance from the very, very start. If you poorly word an offer, it can look like a contract. Beware. Ask AI for some help or legal or an HR pro, whatever. Okay. And the fifth component is a decision framework, not just a gut check. In our hiring process, we've got the job description. We've got the sourcing strategy. We've got the structured, consistent interview process. We've got the legal compliance built in from the start. Fifth component is a decision framework, not a gut check. We want to score our candidates based on criteria consistently before we just compare them to one another personally, who we liked better, who we connected better. This keeps bias out and gives us documentation. If a decision is ever questioned, and I've had this happen before. I was the HR manager at an organization and a suit got filed against me that it was a discriminatory practice based on how I made a hiring decision. Do you know I had to go back and show every job posting I had done over a certain look back period of time, every candidate who had applied to those jobs, give every resume, every question that was asked, any notes, scoring, or any of that, and reasons for declinations or offers. It was a lot. And do you know you have to have that data based on it's HR data, at least in the state of Missouri, you have to have that for 7 years after the decision is made. Mm. How many of you are actually keeping resumes? How many of you are taking a look at your documentation at that level? Not a lot. And if you're not using an HR payroll software and storing all of your employee documents in there, goodness knows, I don't know where your stuff is at. You probably don't know either. We need a standardized approach there too. But we need this framework. We need the scoring when it comes to our hiring. It also helps when you're part of a hiring team if everyone's using the same rubric, right? Not their personal preference. We're looking at the scoring. And here's what I do at the end of an interview process that I'm facilitating. And gosh, does this make people uncomfortable? I couldn't tell you how much I don't care that this makes people uncomfortable. At the end of the process, I've got the rubric. Everyone gives me the score, and then they have to give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. If this is the first candidate they've interviewed out of 3, I make them give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And could they give me I don't know, I want to talk to other people? No. If this was the only candidate, would you hire him or would you not? If you're telling me right now you want to speak to other people, you are not a thumbs up. Or you're a poor decision maker. Like you're here because you're on leadership and you're making hiring decisions for this organization. You're not going to be like, I don't know, let me get the 3 and then compare the 3 to each other. That's going to be based on who you like the most, right? Does this person check all of the boxes? That's what we need to know. Where do they score consistently? Thumbs up, thumbs down. That's where we're at. Okay, so those are the 5 components of your hiring system. I'd love for you to pause just a second and think, okay, where are we falling short and what can we implement? And really, of those 5, go through and knock out one by one. Don't be like, this is such a huge, I don't have any of these. I get it. But start one by one. Start with the job descriptions and then work your way down. So let's talk about the offer and what comes next. So we've went through the interview process. We've went through the selection process. And now we're ready to make an offer. So what happens at the offer and then what happens next? A lot of people think hiring stops when the candidate says yes. Okay, we've got an accepted offer. Hallelujah, that feels so good. The offer letter is part of the hiring system. So I talked about giving an offer letter. We need to do that. But how you handle the time between I've extended the offer, it's been accepted, and when they start the work, this is mission critical, and most companies are doing crickets in this time period. And a lot, especially for professional roles, this is usually at least a 2-week process, sometimes a month. It's at least a 2-week process because they're giving notice, but maybe they're going to take a week off also or whatever. And we're just silent. We're just silent during this process. What are we doing? Surely when you're listening to this, you're like, yeah, that is kind of weird, but what are we supposed to do? Right? Like, oh yeah, we're just going. We've been like the interview, we did a questionnaire, we did the interview, we did a background screen, we did the offer, all of these things, the offer first, then the background screen. We went through and did all these things, and then we just ghosted them for 2 to 3 weeks. And this is when buyer's remorse sets in. How we're leaving this place that feels cozy and comfortable. And now we've made it awkward saying that we're going to leave, but they're giving me a counter. A lot of places will give a counter offer and you're just silent over here waiting for them to start. No, we've got to talk to them. How you handle that time is part of the hiring system. I call this the pre-boarding window, and most small businesses, but a lot of businesses just completely waste it. Somebody accepts your offer on a Friday. We don't talk to them for 2 weeks. What happens in the 2 weeks? Nothing. No communication, no paperwork, no excitement. Then they show up on day 1. They feel like they're an afterthought. We're going to go deeper into onboarding the next episode. That is episode 3 in this system, is onboarding. That's going to be important. Just know that hiring and onboarding are one consistent experience. One goes right into the other for new hires. They're not separate. I've got them as separate systems, but hiring and onboarding, this is rolling through it. So 3 things I want you to think about. The offer letter essentials. Let's just map out what needs to be in your offer letter. Job title, start date, compensation, hourly or salary, exempt or non-exempt, at will language if your state recognizes that. I operate in the state of Missouri primarily. It does. And a clear statement that the offer is contingent on background check, drug screening, I-9. That's your offer letter piece, okay? That matters. That's your essentials. The pre-boarding window, we don't want to waste this part. I'm going to say paperwork loosely. Send their enrollment stuff before day one. Hopefully you're using an HR payroll software and we're going to send them, they're going to finish their direct deposit. They're going to put in there who their emergency contact is. They're going to fill out their address and all of that information, maybe their t-shirt size, their tax paperwork. They're going to start their I-9. They're going to get all of this. Maybe they're going to start reading the handbook. Send that all to them before day one. Day one is not, we're going to go into onboarding, y'all, but day one is not doing a bunch of paperwork. We're going to send that to them and we're going to pace it out so they're getting regular communication from us. First, we're going to send them the huge congrats email. They should have gotten a phone call, by the way, first. We're going to send them a congrats email, and then we're going to send them an email letting them know we're going to be sending them their pre-boarding information to fill out in our HR payroll software, or we do it manually so they can expect to get PDFs, whatever. Here's where it's going to come from. Here's when they're going to get that. Here's how long they're going to have to do it. Send that email. Pause, then send the actual pre-boarding link or the documents. Follow up with them a couple of days later, ask them if they have any questions on any of that. When you receive it back, reply, thanking them. Go through it all, make sure they've actually completed it, go back and forth. Like, we've got things to send them. I'm not saying we have to write them a song. It doesn't have to be anything bananas. We just want to be in constant communication with them so they know we are excited, we are prepared, we want you. And we are professional. Look at us go. This is the process. A little bit of intentionality here can help with any cold feet that they have. We don't want to be ghosted, right? We want to show them we are in it to win it because they're changing their life right now. They're leaving their comfort zone. They're coming in to be with us. They're trusting us. We're trusting them. Let's show up in this pre-boarding process. And then I-9 verification. This is something that I feel like people think is a nice to have. Legally, they cannot work in your organization if they have not completed the I-9 verification in the first 3 days of employment. Period. They have to do the I-9 verification. And it's not that big of a deal, but for some reason, we struggle to do this as employers. This is part of your employer responsibility to make sure that they are legally able to operate in the United States of America. We have to see, for example, their driver's license, their social security card, and their birth certificate, or their passport. We have to see these documents. So they can complete the first part of this portion, let's say on our HR payroll system or on a printed sheet of a PDF that we send them. They can complete it, but then we as HR or the manager, whoever you have trained to do it, has to verify the documents, scan them in the system. Now, we've got to make sure that we're saving them securely, but this is required. And I've been at organizations where we haven't had this done. I've had to put somebody on an unpaid leave right there at the beginning until we can get it done. Dang, you worked the first 3 days, you're on an unpaid leave until you get these documents in because we have to stay compliant as an employer. That is silly. Okay. We should have already got this done. But you know what? Some people don't. That is your legal responsibility. I-9 verification, knock it out. You can do e-verify also. There's tons of options here. Okay. I know what you might be thinking. This sounds like a lot of a process for a small to mid-sized business. And here you only hire, 1 to 2 to 3 employees a year max. So this is overkill. If you're only doing this a couple of times a year, then you need a process just as much as anyone else because you don't want to recreate the wheel every single time. You just can't argue with me that you don't do it often enough, so you don't need to have this level of formality. You do. I don't care if you're hiring all the time. Make this process so you can rinse and repeat. If you're not hiring all the time, make this process so it's consistent because there's time gaps and training and all of that stuff going on. Everybody needs the process. Why do you need the process? Because I've seen people hire personality hires and then wonder within 6 months why they're not performing. I have seen business owners ask about things that they shouldn't, children, in the interview process. And you know what? You don't always know who you're interviewing. I have seen people literally have suits filed during the interview process because of a discriminatory. You might have a person who is literally chasing cash, or you might have a person that you actually offended. Either way, it doesn't matter. You did something illegal and you're going to pay. That's another reason why this matters. Or you never did I-9s. and you got audited. The person's working here. They're fine. They're obviously an American citizen. Relax. We just never did it. You get audited, you're going to get a fine for that. And an audit can come at any time for any reason. Insurance, OSHA, there's a lot of reasons why something could spark. You could just have a disgruntled employee. I don't know what it is, but I want to protect you. This is a fairly simple process, but those are the reasons why these things matter. Here's what you need. It doesn't have to be complicated. You need a one-page job description for every single position, every single job title in your organization. You need a list of 10 interview questions, just 10. You need an offer letter template that you are using consistently. You need a checklist for the first 3 days. Okay, that's it. That's where we can start. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that at the start. Let's just get those things knocked out. So here's your one action from today. Whatever you're currently using as your interview questions, standardize them. Or if you don't have any, go write a list of 10. Just do that to start today. That's your action from today. And if you're like, gosh, I need a little bit more information about any of this, don't forget all my hiring information is in my book, The HR Easy Button, or in that HR Foundations course, saltlightadvisors.com/HR Foundations, or you can pick up hardback, paperback, or Kindle of my book on Amazon, or saltlightadvisors.com/HR Easy Button. I would recommend you move forward with this. Either send this to somebody in your organization and say, help us get compliant in this area. Take the transcript of this, throw it into AI and say, listen to this and then help me apply it to my organization. Whatever you do, do something, right? And if you want to dig deeper into it with me personally, if you're like, you know what, all this episode did is show me that we need this. Can you help? Holler at me. I usually start out by doing an HR audit with clients where I jump into the 13 systems that I've created. I audit you for every single system. Just takes a couple of meetings. And then what I do is I put out a report that's essentially, here's your strengths, here's your gap analysis. And then based off of risks, whether it's compliance risk, insurance risk, cultural risk, financial risk, whatever, here's what I would address in what order. Here's what I think you can do internally. And then here's what I could do externally to help you get going on all of this. So we can start out by that. Okay. Last episode was the employer responsibility checklist, essentially the HR mindset. This one was around hiring. Next one's around onboarding. And you're not going to want to miss that. I'm going to outline what that first 90 days should look like. So subscribe wherever you're listening. I'd love it if you leave a review, shoot me a message, go to saltlightadvisors.com/contact. Tell me what you think. Tell me what's hard, or leave me a comment on YouTube. If this gave you something useful, please share it with somebody either in your organization or a peer that's also running your small business who's maybe been winging the process like you have. I know that this can feel like chaos. I know that if your expertise is not HR, this feels like just another job in your organization, but it's going to make a positive impact on hiring and on retaining. And ultimately, that's what we want. That will make our lives easier in the long run. So let's not waste the chaos, friends. Let's embrace it. See you next time.